You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. Oh my God, have I had COVID. I don't do anything, it seems, by halves. So I have really, truly, honestly had COVID. In fact, I'm still sick, groping my way through the fog of post-COVID lassitude, total lack of energy. And for one, I have a better name to call it, brain woo-woo. In other words, I feel as if I'm walking underwater, certainly thinking underwater, which means not thinking clearly or much at all. I've never experienced anything like this, except perhaps coming out of anesthesia after surgery, but then that didn't last as long as this is lasting. I don't know what qualifies as so-called long COVID or recuperation, or whether it's just called being dotty. But this is definitely like being quite stoned all the time. And without the fun of that. No wit, no laughter, no cleverness, no nothing. Indeed, it's been quite difficult to even find the strength or the focus, hell with that, to read. Difficult to find the strength to focus to listen to music, even to watch television or to follow old movies on television. It's been hard to do anything except sleep, zombie fashion, and then nap again between the next stretch of sleeping, between the next stretch of napping. This went on for days. It was pure Macbeth. Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow creeps in this petty pace from day to day. What's more, the attendant depression and feelings of hopelessness that accompanied it made one, in fact, careless about anything like a day after tomorrow. Well, at last I hung on as friends told me, and the other day the miasma curtain lifted a tiny bit, and I could just glimpse a universe outside. I'm so grateful that I had all of the shots and the boosters, and will continue to have them, and I'm grateful for Paxlovid and other treatments, and I was able to avail myself of them, and I'm grateful for all the clear soup. So much I had clear soup that I'm ready to float away. I'm grateful, Lord, of good medical care and the good colleagues who put up with this for what is now over 3 weeks, willing to sub for me, willing to do whatever I needed. And the point is, I didn't need very much. I just was curled in a fetal position. I'm grateful to you, listeners, for your patience and your forbearance about my having vanished from the air and posts suddenly with less explanation than might have been expected, except that I was unable to make any explanation. So today we're going to have a show featuring my special guest, Kathy Spillar. Kathy Spillar is the executive editor of Ms. Magazine and my sister and colleague there, and she's going to talk about a book that is a history maker in itself. 50 Years of Ms., the best of the Pathfinding Magazine that ignited a revolution that is now out on the anniversary of the 50th birthday. And we'll talk about the making of this magic. But first, we need to go inside the headlines, as long as you remember that I'm really grateful. We have a truncated version of Inside the Headlines this week, both because of my inability to offer a fuller section, and even more so because I want to focus on and highlight the solo subject, which is the Nobel Peace Prize being awarded to Narges Mohammadi, the imprisoned Iranian feminist activist. Altogether, the Iranian theocratic regime of mullahs has arrested her 13 times, convicted her 5 times, and sentenced her to a total of 31 years in prison and 150 lashes. She was specifically awarded the Nobel for her fight against the oppression of women in Iran. The last time she was incarcerated was after the uprising all across Iran in the week after the death of Mahsa Amini, who was murdered by police for not wearing a tight enough headscarf so that her hair didn't show. Mohammadi and other women prisoners burned their headscarves as a sign of protest on the anniversary of her death this year. In the 1990s, Mohammadi studied physics before working as an engineer and becoming an advocate for women's rights and also campaigning to abolish the death penalty. In 2011, she was arrested for the first time for her efforts to assist incarcerated activists and their families. Accused of spreading propaganda, the 51-year-old woman is now serving 10 years in notorious Evin prison. There she works to oppose the conditions inflicted on her and her sister inmates, specifically the use of torture and solitary confinement. Last year, during a brief furlough from prison for medical reasons, she wrote a preface to the book, White Torture, on Iran's use of solitary confinement and of sensory deprivation against her and other prisoners. The aim of white torture, she wrote, is to permanently break the connection between a person's mind and body, to force the individual to recant their ethics and actions. She also closed the section that she wrote with the pledge, "They will put me behind bars again, I know, but I will not stop campaigning until human rights and justice prevail in my country." The awarding of the Nobel is expected to renew street activism led by women. Although, just last Sunday, a 16-year-old girl, Armita Chiaraband, fell unconscious after boarding a subway car in Tehran with her hair uncovered. She's in a coma in a military hospital, and what happened to her is unclear. Narges Mohammadi is only the 19th woman to be selected for the Nobel Peace Prize in the entire history of the prize. We have to take our first break here. And by the way, forgive my voice, which today is indescribably hoarse, ragged, craggy, and all sorts of other adjectives that I don't have the lifting of brain fog long enough to delineate for you, so make it up. Anyway, whatever I was saying, you'll have a break right now, and then we'll be right back with Kathy Spillar. Oh, God. Subscribe to this program on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review. Follow us on Twitter at WMC Live, like our Facebook page at facebook.com/WMC Live, and visit us at WMCLive.com for more information about our show and our guests.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Kathy Spillar is the American executive editor of Ms. Magazine, and she's the co-founder and executive director of the Feminist Majority Foundation, FMF, and of the Feminist Majority. She, what to say about her? One of the founders of FMF, Spillar, has been a driving force in executing the organization's diverse programs to secure women's rights, both domestically and globally, since it began in 1987. 87. An expert on anti-abortion terrorism, Spillar has overseen its research and public education activities, its law enforcement relations, its litigation, as well as grassroots organizing to keep clinics open in the face of extremist and terrorist violence. She's played a vital role in the organization's work to mobilize young feminists in college and high school campuses. In December 2001, the Feminist Majority Foundation became the sole publisher of Ms. Magazine, which was founded in 1972. I remember it well because I was recently coming off as the executive editor and then the editor-in-chief. Spillar oversaw relocation of the iconic magazine's editorial operations from New York City to Los Angeles, and in 2005 was named executive editor. Under her oversight, Ms. has increased its investigative reporting and today is one of the largest print and online feminist news sites, reaching readers from across the globe. Under her direction, Ms. has developed an innovative digital textbook resource, Ms. Classroom, covering current feminist topics and activism and used by instructors for all levels of women's and gender studies courses in hundreds of college and university programs across the country. Prior to the co-founding of the Feminist Majority Foundation, Kathy served 4 terms as president of the LA chapter of the National Organization for Women, the largest chapter of NOW at the time. Well, without more to be said, because I could go on and on and on, here is the redoubtable Kathy Spillar. Kathy, welcome to Women's Media Center Live.
Oh, thank you, Robin. I'm just thrilled to be here with a former editor-in-chief of Ms. Magazine, celebrating 50 years of this incredible pathfinding magazine that ignited a revolution.
Yeah, well, the sun never sets on Ms. The family grows exponentially. Listen, congratulations, Kathy, on doing this book. This is amazing. I'm looking at it right now. I could. If you threw it at a sexist man, he would get a concussion, so it's nice and heavy. But it's not so heavy you can't lift it and you can't cuddle with it. And 50 years of Ms., the best of the Pathfinding Magazine that ignited a revolution, and so it did.
Yes.
And edited with commentary by you and the editors of Ms. And, oh, God, all right. I don't know where to begin. Well, I do know where to begin because I have done quite a few anthologies myself. So emerging as I have from the sisterhood trio, sisterhood is powerful, sisterhood is global, and sisterhood is forever. I once said if sisterhood is found, if there's sexism found on Mars, I don't want to hear about it because somebody else better do that one. I can really appreciate, as few can, what labor went into this book. How did you do it? It's you and the staff of Ms. Wonderful Camille Hahn put this tome together, and it's very lively. It's illustrated throughout. It goes back and forth with letters and with funny pieces and with serious pieces. How did you choose from 50 years? How did you cull?
With great difficulty. Full stop. Almost impossible. In fact, the first manuscript we turned in, our wonderful editor, Knopf, Vicki Wilson got back to us and said, "I hate to tell you this, but you got to cut it in half." And it was because there was so much that Ms. has done over its 50 years. What an extraordinary record of this contemporary movement.
Right.
The issues, the challenges, the activism, the heartbreaks. Ms. has played such a critical role in the growth of the feminist movement, naming the problems, defining the problems, proposing solutions, connecting a community that, as you know, is not only here in the United States, but it is global. And it was really, a joyous time, although, putting all this together, but just very difficult to cull through the 50 years and figure out what to include. And, unfortunately, what had to be on the cutting room floor, as they call it. But really, and it's turned out so beautifully. I agree with you that the graphics, the iconic covers that are included, the letters are just wonderful, and that's just a smattering. It's just, and then we tried to bring people up to date throughout. So, where are we now on sexual harassment? Ms. was the first to put it on its cover.
Right.
What's happening now on violence against women? What's happening on lesbian and gay rights? On abortion?
Right.
On the Equal Rights Amendment. So we knew from the beginning that there were key issues that had to be included, and then it was a matter of starting to dig and find the pieces that would fit best. And I have to tell you, there were some surprises along the way, and they're in the book.
Well, I'm awestruck because I know what this involves. I mean, when I refer to sexism on Mars, what I meant was that I'm not going to do Sisterhood is Galactic. I mean, I flatly refuse. So this is to just be quite an accomplishment, quite amazing. And younger women, of course, will find themselves here. And I was having this conversation with one of the former, another of the former editors in chief, and she was saying that she had a disagreement with a third editor, former editor in chief, who was saying, "Oh, I would have done it differently. I would have done this. I would have done that." And I said to her, "Well, you would have done it differently, and she would have done it differently, and I might have done it a little differently, but the point is." That it is profoundly relevant because the issues lamentably are the same or very close to being the same. I mean, certainly with Roe they are, and where we've won, and we have won, and this shows the winnings that we have garnered. Where we've won, we've just uncovered more work to do. So on the one hand, it's a woman's work is never done. On the other hand, it's cause for great celebration and back-patting of ourselves, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. And, as we've traveled around the country, and we're holding about 35 events with local feminist communities all across the country, bringing together Ms. readers and feminists and local leaders and elected women in office and editors and contributors to the magazine over the year whose pieces appear in the book. We're having these wonderful conversations, and it's a credit to Ms. having not only chronicled this 50 years, but really showing the depth of understanding and passion that it takes to make change, and then the changes that have happened, and what a stronger movement we are today than when Gloria and a few journalists and activists, and I always say that's very important. There were activists in the room at the birth of Ms. because Ms. has been a connector between the ideas of this movement, which are its greatest strength, and the activist community here and around the world working on these ideas to make positive change. And it just shows the power of combining ideas and action in creating forward movement for us.
Seamlessly, absolutely seamlessly, because when they are separated off, that's where you get overly academic, abstruse, abstract thinking, and sometimes mindless activism. So you don't need you don't need those two things, but you've got them in combination. And the women's movement is very special because of that, I think.
Exactly. And as you said, it is intergenerational. Young women will not only find themselves in this book, but I think gain even maybe a new appreciation on the fights that have been waged in this contemporary movement from over 50 years ago, bringing us to this point in time when we are in a horrendous backlash against women's further progress, not only here, but in many countries around the world. With the rise of authoritarianism, the attack on women's rights is vividly in sight. And I think we just got to keep in mind that some of these fights have been waged before, and that you can never stop fighting. You can never stop pushing forward. And we're going to make it. This latest setback on abortion rights is not going to last. It's already being changed by activism on the ground in these states that are putting it into their own constitutions, state constitutions, that abortion is protected. And we're seeing a real pushback against candidates who are campaigning on having been so proud to cut off abortion in some states. They're losing their races, and they're going to keep losing their races. And so I am hopeful, and that's a message that I think is really coming out of these events around the country is we have to realize that this is not an easy fight. I mean, we're changing the entire world at a most fundamental level, and that by coming together, by understanding our own history, by understanding what worked and what didn't, but also knowing what must be ahead of us. And that's the thing we keep reminding everybody about the book. It's not just a look in the last 50 years. It really is about how do we move forward more powerfully, more effectively towards equality.
Right. Yeah. That the suffragist, I think it was Elizabeth Oakes Smith, said in the 1850s, do we fully understand, do we fully comprehend what it is we're about here? That we are challenging the existence of the entire social compact. And I've often thought of that because, of course, she was absolutely right. I mean, this is not a revolution where you leave it on the streets or in the conference rooms or in the halls of politics. This goes everywhere, absolutely everywhere. And the thing that I think is, you see, remarkably different this time around, Kathy, and I wonder whether you feel the same, is that, yes, there have been assaults against democracy before. Lots of them. And we saw it in World War II, most notably. But they have never specifically targeted women. There have also been hundreds of billions of assaults against women, but those have been done individually and in groups and in smaller groups. So this is the first time there's been a coherence of women-led reaction fighting back. And I think that's what will make the difference, and make the difference qualitatively as well as quantitatively. Like we saw in Iran, and interestingly enough, just today, the Nobel Peace Prize was awarded to Mohammadi, one of the great women feminist leaders of Iran. And she was among the women who, of course, rebelled, and rebelled notably. She's in for at least life imprisonment with lashings and torture and horrors. It doesn't stop us. We keep going. And I find that a kind of woman's strength, if you know what I mean. It's not bombs and toughy nuffy. It's an endurance and she persevered. We are persevering. Tell me what you're finding as you go around the country. How far are you into the book tour now? Halfway about or more? Or?
Well, we're about a third of the way through. We have probably another 20 events ahead of us. By the way, it's a different collection of people on these panels at each event. But it is inspiring, first of all, the joy, Robin, that the audience finds with Ms. and the impact it has had on their lives, their mothers' lives,
of course,
their daughters' lives. And just last night again, a woman saying how it had changed her entire life because she finally understood that it wasn't her, it was the system. It was, and that's a refrain that we hear time and time again. But it also the strength that I think feminists can gather from each other at moments like this, knowing that this isn't the first time we have faced such attacks. It will not be the last. No. But, looking here and looking abroad, for example, the Iranian Revolution, understanding the power of these ideas and how the fight can be waged, and even in the face of death and imprisonment, that this fight goes on. I think we can take such inspiration from that and such hope.
Kathy, I'm also, just on a personal level, knowing you as I do, I am very pleased. I'm delighted, in fact, that you are doing this book tour. Now, it may be exhausting you and you may be ready to walk into walls, because I know a book tour can do that. But you often are stuck in street organizing, campus organizing, up on the Hill in Congress, dealing with morons, in conference rooms, setting policy. You don't always get out to hear women speak from their gut, or you don't do it. You don't get a chance to do it enough, the way that Gloria does, the way that I have for years and years and years, where people just spill their thoughts and their feelings and their hopes, and they weep and you cry and everybody cries and laughs, and it is a joyous celebration. I'm so glad that you're experiencing that. I just think it's wonderful.
It is wonderful. You're absolutely right, Robin. And it also, gives all of us the encouragement to keep fighting, because people are so grateful that they have Ms., that they have, there's visibility for the fights that are being waged all over the world and in the country. They're so grateful that this work is being done, and it's really heartwarming.
Yeah. And the way that the magazine has changed over the years, and kept up with the times and kept ahead of the times. I mean, we did the first sexual harassment cover, years and years and years before that became an
40
issue.
years before Me Too.
Exactly.
40 years.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's quite a chunk of time.
And
the same with so many issues that it was ahead of the game. It's very funny because Harry Reasoner, who was, of course, a major television anchor of the early days, predicted that after 6 months the magazine would have nothing to write about. And he had to eat his words. And he did, actually, very graciously.
And to his credit, he did.
Yeah,
he apologized.
He was
absolutely.
He was mortified. Yeah. 50 years later, we haven't begun to exhaust ourselves. So
not at all. And Robin, so often these issues, you've just named a couple, first appear in Ms.
That's right.
And it takes a while for more mainstream media to pick up on the fact that these issues even exist. And that is the strength of Ms., because Ms. exists within the movement. And those who are writing for the magazine, and by the way, we now have, a very vibrant website. 3 million people read us every year, a big social media following. We're now podcasting too, just like you, with multiple different kinds of podcasts. So we're reaching people however they want to be reached in many different platforms and media. But the issues that we first raised over the last 50 years and even to this day do eventually find their way into more mainstream media. And that's when you're having a real effect. When suddenly the networks are zeroed in on the very issue that you talked about months ago.
That's right.
Then you're having an effect.
Oh, listen, Kathy, I remember when they wouldn't even use the word patriarchy, when they wouldn't use the word sexism. And now you just, it's pro forma. You hear it all over the place. Patriarchal,
In fact,
but
yeah,
it's amazing. They've just picked it up and run with it. There's never any acknowledgement, of course. There's never any, thank you, feminist movement, for pointing out to me that, oh, God, no, we're not going to do that. But it's there. It's there in the speech. It's there in the coverage. It's there.
Yes. In fact, I had to laugh. The New York Times described the book as a, quote, illustrated guide to toppling the patriarchy.
Well, see, there you are. Which means...
Not that they probably like it,
but they admitted it.
That is what it's doing.
And
Absolutely.
they admit that the patriarchy exists. Oh, my God. Even under their own desks. What do you know?
Yeah.
What do you know?
Yeah, and you're right, too, about the breadth of the issues that Ms. has covered over the years. Every aspect of our lives.
The depth of the constituencies as well. I mean, long before diversity became a buzzword, Ms. was on the case. Long before ageism was a buzzword, Ms. was on the case. Mm-hmm. So what you have is a real herstory of the women's movement globally. And the most important, literally, movement of our time, or possibly, I would say, of any time.
Of all time. All time.
There you go.
It is empowering more people than any other movement could have, because we are over half the population. And sexism is a universal condition. I mean, that's the other thing that Ms. has always recognize, is that sexism and racism and discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation, these are universal problems, and that they are being tackled everywhere by indigenous feminist movements.
That's right. And it's been a real honor for me to be associated with the magazine this long. I mean, I started out as a contributing editor. Because I don't know, I was very radical, and I wasn't sure that this was up to my radical standards. But when we marched up into the offices I marched in with a bunch of other radical feminists who were demanding that, well, I don't know, one or another thing. We were upset about a Clairol commercial. And had a right to be, because it said, if I have only one life to live, let me live it as a blonde. And I made the point that if you're a black woman, you don't necessarily want to live it as a blonde. But what we didn't know was that those ads had actually been assigned and directed and accepted by New York Magazine, which did the pilot issue of Ms. as a pullout. Mm-hmm. So, and they were all sitting behind their little cardboard desks. They didn't have the money for real ones. And they all said, well, what should we do differently? What tell us what we should do differently. And, there's something very winning about people who ask earnestly, well, how should we change? How can we be better? Mm-hmm. So my association with the magazine started at that point, and then over the years I became a little friendlier, and then they published a poem, left out a stanza, made me crazy, but still it was in the magazine. And then in time I became a contributing editor, and then an editor, and over the years, to my absolute shock and against my will, editor-in-chief. And it has been an extraordinary journey, and I was so ecstatic to be part of the turnover to you and to the Feminist Majority Foundation, because then I knew it was in really safe hands.
Well, and we kept you. I mean, we couldn't let you go. You're the global editor to this day.
Well, listen, I always say it's like Al Pacino. Just when you think you're out, they pull you back in.
That's right. Well, and we do have a saying at the Feminist Majority Foundation: you can check out, but you can never really leave.
Well, that's so true. So,
it's family. It's family.
That's what it is, darling. Now, I cannot let you go without asking, because I know other people will ask me if I asked it. What do you think the future holds? More of the same to some extent, because we have to repeat ourselves, unfortunately. But we're going to repeat ourselves in different ways. And what do you think the issues of tomorrow are for women?
Well, let me preface all of it by saying that the movement is so much bigger and so much more powerful today than when Ms. was launched.
Oh.
We are now a majority movement. A majority of women in this country self-identify as a feminist, and a very large portion of men as well. And younger women especially identify as feminists. And not only that, but in the latest poll that Ms. and the Feminist Majority Foundation just sponsored with Celinda Lake and her team at Lake Research Partners, we asked about whether abortion remains a motivating force. And it's incredible. The abortion issue in combination with the Equal Rights Amendment. And by the way, now that women know that rights can be taken away, rights that were once won, it has ignited this incredible grassroots swell of activism and passion. And if you combine abortion rights and the Equal Rights Amendment, you've got such a winning formula for campaigns, and whether it's to put constitutional rights into a state constitution, abortion rights into a state constitution, or elect candidates, if only they will campaign on these issues. So, and that was not in 1972. And Ms. has contributed to the growth of that understanding and the spread of these ideas. So whatever fights we must wage next, and we must. And by the way, I think that getting the Equal Rights Amendment in the Constitution is probably the most critical thing that this movement can do, because what this court has said is that women are not in the Constitution. There is no prohibition in the Constitution against sex discrimination. So listen, Roe versus Wade is only the first thing to fall. We're just waiting for the next shoe. There's a critical case this fall coming before the court on whether or not the domestic violence offenders gun ban is constitutional. For God's sake, we know the relationship between guns and domestic violence and murder. What are we talking about? But we will probably lose this case because we have no rights to be free from violence. And we've got to get the ERA in the Constitution. So, and if we do, then these other fights have a stronger basis for moving forward, these other issues. So
That's right.
I think it's critical. And the other place that we have got to put a tremendous focus is gaining power. Yeah. If only we were represented equally in decision-making rooms everywhere, the world would be a very different place. Utterly. And we've just got to keep that in focus in this movement.
Oh, Kathleen, you are wonderful. And you keep on keeping on, kiddo. I swear, I don't know how you do it. But I do know how you do it. You just don't sleep. And I'm familiar with it. I didn't sleep before COVID, and now I'm making up for apparently, 70, 80 years of not having sleep. God forbid you should get it. Anyway, take care of yourself. I know that a book tour is very tiring, even though the pure excitement of it keeps you going. And listen,
absolutely.
And my love and my congratulations, not just collegial, but also sororal, if that's a word, to the staff and to you and to Ellie Smeal and to the whole gang, because this is quite an accomplishment.
Well, Robin, I can't thank you enough for everything you've done over the years to keep Ms. alive and vital and relevant. And I do hope that your readership gets the book. You're in it. The history of this magazine is there, but also it helps to point a way forward. And your listeners can get it. Go to msmagazine.com/book. They can also sign up for a free year of the magazine. If they're not already a member, we're going to give them the first year free because we want them to keep up with the exciting things happening.
Wow, that's a good deal.
So it is a good deal, and I hope you'll take us up on it. And thank you again for everything that you do to keep these issues in focus and having real punch.
Well, the book is 50 Years of Ms., the best of the Pathfinding Magazine That Ignited a Revolution. And it's like a flame in your hand. So run, do not walk to your nearest bookstore or your nearest computer. Order it from the magazine itself, order it from Amazon or wherever you get your books, because this is one that you'll keep going back to again and again and again, always with rage, righteous rage, and with joy, with pure,
Yes.
unadulterated, unfiltered delight. So
Yes.
much love to you, Spillar.
Well, thank you, Robin, and thanks for giving us a platform this weekend to bring this to your listeners' attention.
My pleasure and my honor.
Thank you.
We need to take a short break here, but then I will return with our new feature, which is the Poetry Corner. Don't go away. The Women's Media Center, founded in 2005 by Jane Fonda, Gloria Steinem, and myself, is a progressive, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization working to make women visible and powerful in media. You can learn more about the WMC at womensmediacenter.com.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Now, from our Poetry Corner, as I promised you pre-COVID, excuse me, there will be a poem a week for the remainder of the book, the new book that's out. So you'll slowly but surely get the entire book read to you. This poem was written after a visit to MoMA, the Museum of Modern Art, which had an extraordinary Monet show of water lilies, and it so blew me away that this was one of the poems that came out of it. It's a dark poem, but it's a poem that's filled with strange light that suffuses Monet's work until, that is, you begin to see the darkness. Well, here it is. It is dedicated to Maria Nadotti, and it's called Giverny. That was his garden that he created in France and then painted for the rest of his life. Giverny in New York. Giverny in New York. At first, it was all about light. Now shadow leaches through the gleam on certain days. The critic proclaims Monet's brush was made of light. Young edges of his lily pond were clear. Water there, land here, viewing we know where we are in every frame. Then something shifts. War, a wife's death, one son dying, another gravely ill. Age. His cataracts grow so severe he takes to numbering the tubes of paint to know which colors he is using. Space loosens, edges blur. How to know now where we are? The pond's edge, squinting down through haze, or underwater, blinking up ripples as we sink, Ophelian. The canvases grow panoramic, encircle rooms. If denied detail, art demands scope. Surfaces, meticulous once, now smear crusty or paint-free the critic puzzles, unable to see Monet now paints in Braille. I also feel my way to a garden darkening, not so benign, his subjects becoming mine. Mute violence utters how plants, competing for space and sun, cheer the trees suffering an amputated limb. Mosquitoes stab skins, bloat on blood. Dragonflies prey on mosquitoes. Pigeons bully finches at the feeders, and a red-tailed hawk snaps up a pigeon mid-dive in a shriek of feathers, while dried froth wreathes the fly-sequined tongue of a mouse, eye poisoned. How does your garden grow? The world in miniature. Beauty, hunger, murder, art, driven to abstraction. I must number my syllables before I fail to recall which words can translate this from Braille. And that's our show for this week. You can follow me on social media at The Robin Morgan. You can check out my blog at robinmorgan.net, and you can find my new novel, Parallax, and my just-out new book of poems, Harvesting Darkness, wherever books are sold. Portions of this program were taped earlier. Views expressed here do not necessarily represent the WMC. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live. Executive producer, as well as founding and sustaining sponsor, Regina K. Scully. WMC president and co-executive producer for this program, Julie Burton. I'm Robin Morgan, your producer and host. Thank you for being with us. Join us next time on Women's Media Center Live.